Today I will be telling you the tale of Hang Nadim from the Sulalat al-Salatin. Come join me. Hi everyone, I'm Heidi. I'm a Malaysian author and welcome back. Today I'm very excited to be doing the final installment of our Sejarah Melayu trilogy. I will be telling you the tale of Hang Nadim. So sit back, relax, chill and enjoy this story. When the swordfish attack on Singapore ended, the people cheered for the youth who had come forward to save the day. His name was Hang Nadim, and they declared him to be the cleverest person in all of Singapore. "Summon Hang Nadim to the palace," said the Paduka Sri Maharaja, the king. "I want to reward him for his good deed." Most of the ministers agreed, but there were others who worried about how popular Hang Nadim had become. They began to whisper lies to the king. "Your Highness, we are concerned. If this boy who is so young can gain the trust and the support of the people, what will he do when he grows up? Yes, Your Highness, Hang Nadim is young now, but when he grows up, he will become even more powerful. Why, he could even take over the kingdom." This talk of treason angered the king. He immediately ordered the execution of the young boy who had saved the land. That night, soldiers crept up to the humble home of Hang Nadim, which was on a beautiful green hill just outside the town. They waited in the dark. And in the morning, when Hang Nadim came out, they attacked and killed the boy who had saved Singapore. The blood of Hang Nadim spread across the green hill. It is said that because of the cruel act of the king, the hill became stained with the blood and was later named Bukit Merah, or Red Hill. The end. So that is the story of the tale of Hang Nadim. I told you the story of Tunjana Katib in episode 14 and the swordfish attack of Singapore in episode 15. Link down below if you want to catch up. If you haven't seen those two episodes, I think it would be a good idea to listen to those two episodes first, because this tale of Hang Nadim is actually a continuation of those two stories, especially the swordfish attack. If you recall, the swordfish attack was stopped by the ingenuity of a young child, a youth. This child became an overnight hero to the people of Singapore, and even the king, the Maharaja, wanted to reward this child. However, the ministers were worried about his growing popularity. They were jealous and they started whispering nonsense to the king. And the king was really silly and put Hang Nadim to death. So in the actual text of the Sulalat al-Salatin, the child is actually not named. In fact, we don't even know whether this youth is a boy or a girl. In later retellings of the story, the youth is given a name, and that is Hang Nadim. Now, there is a reference to a Hang Nadim in another section of Sejarah Melayu, and he is said to be the son of Hang Jebat and the adopted son of Hang Tuah. But I don't think these two Hang Nadims are related, because the timing is a bit off. So anyway, we don't know why Hang Nadim became the youth in this particular story, because the Sejarah Melayu doesn't actually name the child. But I think in later retellings, later adaptations, storytellers have adopted this name, Hang Nadim, and given the child that name. Again, it is interesting to note that these places still exist in Singapore today. Hang Nadim was said to be killed on a green hill which turned red with his blood. Today, this hill is called Bukit Merah, or Red Hill. In another version of the story, Hang Nadim is tied up in chains and drowned at Batu Berhenti, which means stopping stone. And this place is in the Straits of Singapore. It has been said that the people living nearby can sometimes hear the sound of chains and cries for help from the sea. So that is the story of Hang Nadim. Let's now turn to the actual book, Sejarah Melayu. Last week, we looked at the many different versions of Sejarah Melayu. According to the Raffles 18 version, which is said to be the oldest version, this book covers the period from the Malay kingdom of Palembang around the 7th century through Bintan and Temasek, which is Singapore, and Malacca in the 13th century. When Malacca fell to the Portuguese in 1511, its history continued in Pahang, Johor, and Bintan, and Kampar across the straits to Sumatra. In other versions, the description of life in the other Malay states were updated to the post-Dutch era. So if you recall, I told you about how all the different copyists, the writers would sometimes write their own interpolations, which basically means they would add things that weren't in the original manuscript. And now, today, there are various versions of Sejarah Melayu. In fact, there are as many as 32 different manuscripts which are kept in libraries all around the world. This then begs the question, who actually wrote the Sejarah Melayu? Was it written by just one person, or was it more of a collaborative effort? Was this book started at one point and then later on events were added into this book? So that's quite an important question. So who wrote Sejarah Melayu? Well, the answer to that is that we don't actually know for sure. Even until now, there is a debate as to who actually wrote the Sejarah Melayu. The most popular opinion is that this book was written by the Bendahara of Johor, Tun Sri Lanang, after the fall of Malacca in 1511. So this view is shared by scholars such as Muhammad Haji Salleh. I think I mentioned him in previous episodes. And Muhammad Haji Salleh wrote this book, The Genealogy of Kings, Sulalat al-Salatin, and it's on the cover, essentially. You know, he says that it was written by, I don't think you can see this. Anyway, it was written by Tun Sri Lanang. So this scholar believes that Sejarah Melayu was written by Tun Sri Lanang. So this is the view shared by scholars such as Muhammad Haji Salleh, who argues that the Sejarah Melayu was written in 1612 and eventually became known as Raffles 18. Whilst it is true that the Bendahara Paduka Diraja was mentioned as the author of the Sejarah Melayu in another work, Butanus Salatin, which was written in 1612 by Nuruddin ar-Raniri, there is still no clear evidence that Tun Sri Lanang was the author of the 1612 recension. It is the opinion of Professor Ahmat, the guy who wrote this book, that Tun Sri Lanang was actually a pseudonym. Lanang is an old Javanese or Kawi word for man. It means man. So this scholar, Ahmad Adam, believes that Tun Sri Lanang is a pseudonym and it might have been written by many other authors. So who was Tun Sri Lanang? According to several versions of the Sejarah Melayu, Tun Sri Lanang was a man named Mahmud. However, in other versions, his name was said to be Tun Muhammad. He was a son of Tun Ahmat, the Temenggung, and was probably appointed the Bendahara Paduka Raja in his late 30s and early 40s. We do not know exactly when Tun Sri Lanang started writing the Sejarah Melayu, but the Shalaber recension, one of the versions of Sejarah Melayu, claimed that he was the author-editor. However, according to the Raffles 18 recension, it is quite clear that a person called Tun Bambang was carrying out the command given by the Raja di Hilir in putting together this book. There is also some evidence that the Sejarah Melayu was revised by Tun Bambang in 1612. According to Professor Ahmat, this guy here, there is little doubt that an original text of the Sejarah Melayu that was written by someone who actually witnessed the last days of the Malacca Sultanate did exist. The author must have followed Sultan Mahmud Shah, the last Sultan of Malacca, when he escaped from Malacca and went to Bintan and then South Johor. It is not improbable that another unknown author who had also served under Sultan Mahmud Shah had continued the work on Sejarah Melayu. Professor Ahmat says that in the writing tradition of maritime Southeast Asia, and by this I'm referring to the time before the 18th century, it is a tradition of maritime Southeast Asia that no local or native author would ever mention his name in a work. This is due to the practice of observing the name taboo, which means that one's personal name must never be revealed. For example, the author of Nagara Katagama, for example, the author of Nagara Kartagama, which was written in 1365, only used his pseudonym Prapancha, which means mistaken or confused mind. He's a very humble author, I think. According to Professor Ahmat, Tun Sri Lanang was also a pseudonym. He was not the author, but one of many copyists who recopied the Sulalat al-Salatin. This is the opinion of Professor Ahmad Adam. Some other scholars have differing opinions, of course. I mentioned Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh. He is of the view that Sejarah Melayu was written by Tun Sri Lanang. So that's really interesting, the differing views of different scholars as to who wrote the Sejarah Melayu. So who do you think wrote Sejarah Melayu? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed the story and whether you have anything to add to the conversation. If you enjoyed the story, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Please support me in my mission to get these stories out there. I hope you enjoyed my little journey into the Sulalat al-Salatin, Sejarah Melayu. I will be coming back to this text from time to time because it is full of very cool, very interesting stories. But we will leave Sejarah Melayu for now. I hope I managed to get all my Sejarah Melayu facts right. But if I didn't and offended some historian or writer, I'm really sorry. Please let me know and correct me and contribute to the discussion. Again, I want to stress that I'm not an expert in this field. I'm just an enthusiastic lover of stories and folktales, and I just want to get these stories out there. Next week, I will be doing something completely different from this usual format. So thank you again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next video.